everyone, to the All Things Good podcast. I'm your coach and your host, Giovanna Cirillo. I hope that you are doing well today. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood. And honestly, I'm kind of always in a good mood. But today I'm just feeling like another spark of energy. And I hope that when you hear this, you have the same energy. And if you don't, then I'm going to need you to bring it up a notch. Okay. Just bring it up a notch. What are we going to talk about today? Today, we are going to be talking about transcending limitations. But before we get into the topic of the day with our amazing guests, I want to make special announcements. The first one is, of course, a shout out to the one and only Bro Reevement. The founder and the CEO of this organization is Daniel Ratchford, and you can find him on Instagram and Facebook. And what they are doing is they are helping men and young boys grieve. And to me, once again, I think that's beautiful. It's beautiful because we're coming into a new time where men were really just at one point didn't care. It wasn't something that they focused on. They just kept working, they kept going through the motions, and they never found a moment of vulnerability. But there is a group of men in Passaic, New Jersey, owning up to their emotions. They're cultivating their hearts and they're creating a safe space. They're coming back home to them, and that is amazing. Speaking of coming back home, I have a new podcast series titled The Homecoming, and this is for my ladies. Ladies, listen, this is for the ladies who have lost themselves in people pleasing. They have lost themselves. They have never set their boundaries, and they're ready to come back home. They're ready to create that sacred safe space within them. And so this podcast series is especially for my ladies. Listen, fellas, if you want to tune in, you can, because boundaries and homecoming is for everyone. Today, we have an amazing guest by the name of Albert Bramante. So, Albert Bramante helps performers and educators and creators unlock their fullest potential. He blends psychology, performance strategy, and AI to fuel unstoppable momentum. With 20 years at the crossroads of entertainment and higher education, he's coached actors to land life changing roles, mentored students to become high performing professionals, and developed systems that help break through fear, imposter syndrome, and self sabotage. Help me by welcoming Albert Bramante. Welcome, Albert. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm excited to hear about your coaching practice and how it's helped many people. So, tell us about your coaching practice. I already have a brief rundown of it, but I want our listeners to know what your coaching practice entails and who your ideal clients are.
Well, for the past 20 or so years, I've been primarily working with actors and performing artists, yeah, in a representational category. So, and I've also taught thousands of college students over the years at the community college level. So, what I often do is work with people overcoming their self-imposed limitations. That could be subconscious blocks, that could be internal saboteurs, self-sabotaging elements that are holding them back. And so I kind of integrate, in a sense, like NLP, hypnosis, hypnotic coaching patterns, in a sense where it's utilizing like language and utilizing the power of like reframing, changing internal views, shifting limiting belief systems in a sense, so that we can become the best versions of ourselves and move forward from any of the blocks that are holding us back.
Interesting, interesting. Now, okay, so you mentioned a couple of things, but first and foremost, you said you help creatives overcome self-sabotage and fear. So can you provide us an example of how these things have hindered creatives?
Sure. The first thing I want to clarify about fear is it's not something that should be demonized. It is there to help us survive. That's what's helped our species survive thousands of years. If we didn't have fear, we wouldn't be alive today because we wouldn't have had the mechanisms to keep us alive. So fear is a valid emotion. So the only thing is, some people it can be an overdrive, and for some people it just needs to be channeled in a different way. So it can hold us back by not moving forward, by holding us in a similar pattern of just not of being in limbo in a sense. So, and it can cause self sabotage because our brain and our subconscious mind has really one main purpose: survive, and that means protecting us at all costs,
Right.
and that means protecting us from fear. And if that fear is an overdrive, it may hold us back. And so my primary work has been with actors and performers. So if you're, let's say you have a fear of putting yourself out there, or fear of rejection, a fear of failure, which are very common fears amongst creatives, amongst actors, amongst performers, is the fear of just looking bad, or being held back, or being told no. So sometimes the best way to do it is keep you safe, but not putting yourself out there, staying in your comfort zone, being mediocre in a sense. Well, another fear that often is not discussed a lot, which is really important, is a fear
Mhm.
of success.
Mm. Yes.
That's often not talked about because it's not a conscious fear. Because you talk to almost everybody, and everybody wants to be successful. And that's why we go through motion. That's why we invest in education and coaching, and better enhancement, because we want to be better in our field. However, being successful requires change. It requires more responsibility. It requires different lifestyle, which
Right.
is terrifying for some people. I mean, as human beings, one of the guarantees in our lives are change. Change is always going to be a guarantee. However, it is something that we fear the most. We fear change the most. We don't want to. We're resistant to it. It's a terrifying concept to change,
Right. Right.
and therefore, what winds up happening is we hold ourselves back. We want to cling and hold on to what we know, what's constant, and things that change, but that can also hold us back. And we see this a lot with when societies change, when times have changed, how people don't want to move forward and adapt to it, and then they wind up just not being successful. And it can be a saboteur if you're holding on to the past, or
Right.
holding on to the way things should be. We saw this a lot we all been part of in the world the past 5 years, 2020. We all know that was a pivotal year, and a year that a lot of people want to forget because of how traumatic it was.
Right.
However, it was a major change. How everything now became virtual, how everything became more independent and working from home. I remember the Zoom wasn't. I didn't really know too much about Zoom and prior to 2020 until it was kind of a way to adapt, and a lot of people were having a hard time with it. Some people looked forward to it, were excited by it, but other people were just totally resistant to it, and they were having such a hard time coping. And it's not just Zoom. I mean, 30. I come from a Gen X kind of background, so there was a time where I remember we didn't have the internet,
Right.
and for when the internet first came out and computers first started like really taking over, a lot of people were fearful of computers. A lot of people were fearful of this technology. Unfortunately, a lot of people lost jobs because of that fear.
Right.
They weren't open to learning about technology, and that can sometimes hold people back. So fear can definitely be a very powerful saboteur if it's not channeled with, or dealt with, or coped with in a proper fashion.
Right. Now you would consider that, because I know you have some education in psychology, a subconscious programming, a subconscious fear.
Hmm.
And our listeners who are longing to become, successful, but also have that fear of success? How can they begin to identify those subconscious programmings within their own minds?
Well, I would first take a look at patterns. What's been, holding you back? So take a hard look at your life, and what are some of the things you're that keep you up at night? And what's holding you back? Because a lot of times, especially if you're the type of person who has a lot of goals but doesn't really achieve them,
Mhm.
and I can speak for myself, like it really took even a lot of work on my own self to realize this, because you see a lot of people who have a lot of they start out on doing a lot of things, a lot of projects, and they don't complete them.
Right.
So if you find yourself procrastinating a lot, if you feel that you have perfectionist tendencies, where everything has to be perfect before you can take any action,
Um,
what I found in the type of work that I've done in the coaching realm, that perfectionism and procrastination are two sides of the same coin.
mm,
And there's a lot of research and a lot of programs out there on eliminating procrastination, eliminating perfectionism. And those are important, those are great. But there's often a sign of something deeper going on when you have these patterns running. So they're symptoms, not problems and by themselves. So there's something deeper happening. Now, what that is, that varies from person to person. So if you find yourself procrastinating a lot or having to be obsessive about being perfect, that may be a sign that there's these fear patterns are holding you back. Could be
mm,
fear of success, it could be any other type of blockage, something that may you need to work on. Again, what that is going to be personal from person to person.
right,
But I would start looking at maybe possibly being unresolved trauma in your life.
right, right.
And
And I,
that doesn't have to be catastrophic trauma. It could be day in a life trauma,
exactly, exactly.
failures. If you grew up in a household that might not have been the most loving household, where you had to compete for your parents' affection and all of that, and worked hard for your parents' affection, and may not have felt that you fully received all of that. That can be traumatic, and that can over time compound and add up. So I would say take a hard look at what's going on in your life. Do you feel the need to always be perfect, and what's holding you back, and why are you not accomplishing what you set to accomplish?
Right. And also I wanted to state that I had did some research on like energy, on what's the quickest form of energy or the most powerful form of energy. And when it came to the difference between thought and speech, thought was more powerful than the actual energy coming from word, from sound.
Yes.
To me was powerful because I don't think people are realizing that the energy that we put into our thoughts, the thoughts that are equivalent to our energy, is creating something within us that is stopping us from becoming the person that we're longing to become. And so,
Yeah. And that's a good point, especially how thoughts are more powerful than language.
yes.
And we could easily say, because language is lip service, we can consciously lie. However, the body can't lie. And this is why, if you're skilled at reading nonverbal signals, you can really detect if somebody's lying or not being completely honest with yourself. So, with themselves. And it's because of the energy they're putting out there, their thought processes. Because
Mhm.
when you can easily say lip service, and sometimes, especially with a good skilled coach, has to look at nonverbal, not just what's going on verbally. Because again, we can tell our therapists or coaches what they want to, what we think they want to hear,
Right.
but that's not adding up. So because their energy is not fully aligned in their statements.
Correct. Correct. Thank you so much for breaking that down. So Your coaching practice involves NLP. Can you explain what NLP is for our listeners?
Sure, that stands for neuro linguistic programming. So, and it was a program designed in the 1970s to kind of model human excellence. So, take part of the process is using both language, which is linguistic, and imagination and neurological processes to combine the two together to change our lives in a sense. So, imagination is a very powerful
Mm.
process. The language you use to not only in the talk that you tell other people, but the voice in your head. And I know when people hear the word voice in your head, they think that means that someone's crazy, but we all have a voice in our head. And I often joke when I hear people say, I don't have a if you're hearing me say voice in your head and you hear something in your mind saying, I don't have a voice in my head, I'm like, there you go. There it is. We all have the voices in our head. That's just as more important than the voices what we hear externally that we use to other people. So watch the language that you use outwardly, but also internally.
Yes.
How we talk to ourselves is important. So it can be like language patterns. So a couple powerful language patterns to stop, to kind of get out of you want to change your life is there's one three letter word that you should use and one three-letter word that you shouldn't use. What you should use is the word yet.
Okay.
So you could be thinking, well, I don't make six figures yet.
Come on.
I haven't launched my podcast yet. I haven't written my book yet. Because when you say the word yet, it's very, very powerful. It signifies things for the future. Now, the word you should avoid is try.
Mm.
I'll try. I'll try my best. No, you won't. Because when you say the word try, like think about this. Someone asks you, can you make it to my event this weekend? Or yeah, I'll try.
Not convincing.
No. You might as well just said no to me if you said you're going to try to be there. I know for a fact you're not coming
Right.
because it's just a limit. So I would change that to will. So I will come, or I might come, or even just say no. I'm not going to be able to make it.
Right.
Um, or rather than saying I will try my best, you will do your best.
Mm.
And so that little shift, like simple NLP shifts in language. Also, try to change. It's a little hard to do, but it's like borrowing from the world of improv, the yes and principle. So what that means, instead of saying the word but,
Mm.
because that kind of like puts brakes on something, use and. So yeah, I really want that car. Instead of saying I really want that car, but I can't afford it, say I really want that car and I can't afford it. Whoops, that's a little better now. It softens it up a bit. Because then your brain is going to start saying, well, how can I find ways to afford it now?
Mm.
So simple changes like that. So, and then working with creative people using these language patterns, which one thing I will often say is to really reframe yourself as a professional working actor, professional working speaker. You're not aspiring, you're not starving, you're not struggling. Also, use the power of the imagination. So, the one principle, which is kind of like even works if people believe in manifestation, but which I do think is effective in certain contexts. So, I always say act as if it's happening.
Mhm. Right.
And because when you act like as if it's happening, you're imagining it in the future as it's happening. So if you're an actor, if you're a performer, imagine you're giving these great performances. And the more you imagine it as being real, your brain does not know the difference between fiction and reality.
Right.
So you're now creating this reality. So the one thing that helped, especially being a first time author last year, the one thing that helped me motivate my book was to actually, in my profile, say I was an author, to introduce myself as an author. Yes, I might not have had a physical book at that point, but using that terminology as I'm an author put it made it more real
Right.
and was more of a motivating factor. So act as if that's again using because the brain does not know the difference between fiction and reality. Could you say, well, yes, some create, but even with your imagination, still your internal reality. So
Right.
use the power of the imagination. But the important thing is not to dismiss it. Be like, because what can happen sometimes we can go through is have this great visualization and then come at him and say, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Right. And you have that thought pattern again.
That thought pattern, now you just defeated that. So I'll use a great story that we all know the actor Jim Carrey. So
I've read on his story. Yes, I love him.
yeah, I think you kind of know where I'm going here with that. So in the early '90s, he was kind of a not struggling actor. So he wrote himself a check for $10 million and dated it for 3 years ahead of time. And every day he looked at that check and was determined it was going to happen. And 3 years later, he was offered the Dumb and Dumber movie with Jeff Daniels, and the offer was $10 million. So now I'm not saying that that's going to always happen for everybody, but the importance is if you work hard and imagining that it's going to happen, you'll start taking the actual actions to get you closer to that goal. Now,
Right.
it may not have been, worst case scenario, maybe he wouldn't have made 10 million, but he could have made a couple million or at least did something. That still would have been a victory.
Right.
But the important thing is just to stay committed to a goal and stay committed to a vision because vision is extremely powerful.
Yes, it is.
The
It
only
is.
way it's going to really be effective and doing what you set out to do is by having a vision. So that is important to have is a good vision and and really believing in that vision because I can guarantee you Jim Carrey wasn't looking at the check saying this will never happen.
Right. Right.
It was this is going to happen and you just and you believe it every fiber of your being that this you're going to be closer to this goal and you and believe closer that you're close to your reaching your vision with every fiber of your being, you're going to be much more effective. So it's using the power of the imagination and the because it's about what as you said the energy we're putting out into the world. We're
Right.
not just saying this I want this but we're actually when we start believing it and putting the energy out, we're going to start taking the actions that are going to get us close to that goal.
Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. The speaking it, the thinking it, and then the acting on it. Because the acting on it it pretty much creates
Yeah.
agreement that says, okay, so you really believe this.
Yeah.
So you're really moving on this. Okay, so then let's work.
Yeah, and that's where I mean, back in 2007, I'm sure we all remember the movie The Secret came out. It was like a big explosion. And while I think that that was important, it's kind of ironic that he called it The Secret because there was really no secret about it. If thousands of years we were kind of harnessing that technology. But one of the things about manifestation, I believe, with the law of attraction is the action component because I could sit here all I want and tell you, I want to be a millionaire. But if I'm just sitting on my chair telling, you want to be a millionaire, but not doing anything about it, not going to be a millionaire.
Right.
However, if I really am committed to that, I'm going to start taking the actions that are going to be it. So you do have to have the energy aligned because you do have to start taking those actions and taking those slight risks. So another way to overcome self-sabotaging behavior is step outside your comfort zone
Mm,
because the only way our lives are going to change if we change.
Right, right.
I see a lot of, I spend a lot of time on social media. I'm sure we all, you've done too. We see these memes at the end of every calendar year. Next year is going to be my year, new me. And that's all great. That's great. But that's only lip service because how are you actually, what are you doing to make it a good year? What are you doing to make it a different year?
Right,
Otherwise, it's just going to be the same year, same circumstances happening, just a different calendar year. So there has to be some actions that have to be taken. And I think New Year's resolutions are cliche because I believe that you can change any time of the year. We can change today, June 19th, we're recording this, and make a change today. And why do you have to wait till January 1st?
correct.
And for a new year, start today and start small because the important thing is you want to take you want to do specific and manageable goals and actionable goals and realistic goals and trackable goals. So I talk about this in my book called The Smart, which is kind of like the SMART goal setting method. Because a lot of times when people set New Year's resolutions or set goals for change, they set them too big and too quickly,
Mm,
not small actionable steps.
right,
And that is what's going to be important. This is one of the reasons why you'll reach that goal, because you're going to deal with setbacks, and setbacks are part of life.
right,
Even you were saying as a podcast host, sometimes you do an episode and the editing or the technology doesn't work in your favor.
right.
But at the same time, having a setback does not mean you're going to say, I quit. This is it. I'm done. Even
Correct.
though that might be that internal second temptation of saying, I'm done. But the truth of the matter is that if if you set more than smaller manageable goals, these setbacks are not going to be so
Right.
much of a drawback. Because one of the biggest resolutions, is we all know it, is I'm going to go to the gym and start in January. I'm now going to hit the gym, and for the first 2 weeks, if anybody who's gym goers in here can know that the first 2 weeks in January is the most crowded
Yeah.
part of the gym. Everybody's there, new people flooding it. But around the third or fourth week of January, even beginning of February, it just it goes away.
Right.
But yet, because people, it's I think a lot of times what happens is set unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
Because you can, if you're not the type of person that's been physically active, you cannot expect to go to the gym 5 days a week and start lifting power, doing bumping heavy iron. If you haven't worked out, you're gonna get yourself sore. You're gonna get yourself in pain, which is all part of the. Some could argue that's part of the process of getting in physical shape is that soreness. But if you're not ready for that, it's this gym thing ain't for me anymore. I
Now
quit.
you did mention something about stepping out of your comfort zone. There was something that I wanted to state because I know what it is to have self-sabotage. I did it for years. And even now, and when opportunities come about, I'm questioning and I'm ready to say, okay, so this is what I do. I look at it to see if I'm going to self-sabotage myself or if this opportunity truly aligns with who I am. And I believe there's a very thin line. And I think that our listeners need to really be mindful of that because there may be a time where you may not want to take an opportunity because it doesn't align with you, but that doesn't mean that you're not taking a risk or stepping out of your comfort zone. You're honoring yourself. And I think that's really important when it comes to stepping into your creativity is honoring who you are as an artist.
And that's the important thing is honoring yourself and that when I say stepping outside your comfort zone, that's going to look differently for everybody.
Right.
And I'm not talking about doing this extreme different action, but small things.
Right.
If you're, want to be an inspiring coach, do a Toastmasters, go give a public speech, go put yourself live on social media,
Right.
hit the live button and just talk. Something a lot of times even with coaches and creatives, a great tool to really step. You really want to step out your comfort zone? Go to the next karaoke night and sing
That's a
without
that's
alcohol. Now, that's terrifying.
Mhm.
Not going to lie. However, you will feel so much better about yourself when you do these actions. I was working. One of my coaches, former coaches, was a public speaker education. He used to do like two-day workshops in public speaking. And the first exercise of the day was to go outside. You want to get over your public speak and just act like an animal, make these sounds, go around town, and really put, stuff out there. It was terrifying. However, the people that completed it, when you come back, getting up and speaking in front of other people is a breeze now. So, but that's the important thing, is stepping outside your comfort zone. Now, I'm not saying that you all should go outside and start acting strange, but do something different, that makes you uncomfortable. Start that podcast, start going live on social media, start
Yeah.
giving public speeches, go to different organizations, reach out, do something, meet people, go to networking events. If you're introverted, go out and talk to people. That's
Mm.
what I mean by stepping outside your comfort zone. Small actions that are different, because you never know what might
Right.
come out of that. And it was a confidence boosters too.
Yes, I love that. I definitely agree with that. I like the examples that you gave. Get a little crazy. Just get a little crazy.
Of course. It is interesting.
Okay, so you have a book titled Rising Above the Script. What is this book about and who is this book for?
Sure. So the book is I've written it with act for performing artists in mind, because that's, as a talent agent for the past 20 years, that's who I work with is our actors primarily. However, when I first started as an agent, I was noticing a lot of actors were self-sabotaging, shooting themselves in the foot, and their verbal actions were telling me one thing, but their energy was telling me a whole nother story. And so that goes back earlier to what we discussed, the energy and language disconnect.
Hmm.
And so they were engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors, not showing up for audition, canceling auditions, turning down auditions, and yet all they kept saying was, "I want to audition." So I couldn't figure out the disconnect. And so I spent a while, I did my doctoral dissertation on self-defeating behavior in performing artists. So that's what really prompted me to write the book.
Okay.
Because part of that is the second part of the title is confronting self-doubt and mastering self-sabotage for performing artists. So that was the major impetus, the driving force for me to write the book, was for that reason, to work with self-sabotage.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, I would like to read this book. So who do you have any mantras or examples of how our listeners can transcend their limitations and connect to their higher selves? Is there anything that
So,
you can, any practices, any methods?
well, I would definitely say connecting to your higher self is simple meditation, and simple, just really focusing on not censoring the messages that you hear.
Hmm.
Because what you want to do is access your subconscious mind. But a lot of times you'll hear things like, "That's not true." Don't just hear it. Also, listen to your dreams too at night. Dreams are very powerful. And the best way the best way is keep a dream journal. So the best way to do that is put a paper and pencil right by your bedside. When you wake up in the morning, write the first thing that comes to your mind.
Hmm.
Do not censor it. Do not edit. Just write what comes to your mind. It may be the most consciously absurd thing you've ever. Just write it, because very powerful. That may be way of your higher self sending you some messages. It may be in a symbolic, metaphorical way, but look at the deeper side of that.
Hmm.
So Get any insights that you get. The same thing goes with your meditation. Reflect. What's the first thought that comes here? I just write it. Do not self edit. Do not self censor. Right. So that's one way to do that. And then of course, self hypnosis or go to an actual hypnotist or a coach or an energy worker and just connect, but do it in an unfiltered way where you're relaxed and again not judging the message that you're hearing.
Right. Yes. I love that. I love that. For me personally, my higher self or my future self came to visit me in my dream. And I think that was one of the most empowering encounters because it was just like, that's me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love her.
Yeah. And I'll even go a step further. I know we're kind of going to make a little esoteric here, but I would definitely say that nightmares, as
Mhm.
much as they're scary, they may have the most helpful information for us if we sit and listen to them
Okay.
and really focus. So, or the villains in our dream, because if you really want to look at things from a higher self perspective, what are really the villains in our dreams? They're us, in a
Mhm.
sense. They're parts of us. So let's listen to the villains, and maybe they have an important message.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Albert, this has been amazing. Tell us, do you have any last words for our listeners or any
Well,
clients that are looking?
again, just try these simple shifts that I talked about. The language, like getting rid of the word "try" and then using the word "yet" and trying the "and" instead of the word "but." Those are very simple strategies, but powerful.
Right.
Just give them a shot and just stay connected to your reason, your passion, why. And if it's something that's really important to you, other people's opinions shouldn't matter.
That's a good one. Yeah, because everybody always has something to say.
And a lot of times, even the critical things that we hear other people say, we have to distinguish, are they doing it because they're trying to help us, or are they operating out of their own insecurity?
Exactly.
Because maybe they themselves are unhappy. Because misery loves company. That's one thing to know. And so I would say the last thing is watch the company you keep. The power of proximity is important. So you should only be around people that are going to build you up, not put you down. And that might mean people that are close to you may not be the best, people to be around.
Mm, yes. Yes. Because they're so used to seeing you just the way you are now.
Because they themselves are not happy with themselves.
So good, Albert. Thank you so much. I truly enjoyed this. How can our listeners find you, connect with you, hire you, book you?
Well, I'm always open to getting new messages. So social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. Go to my website, albertbramante.com, and just really you can find about stuff about me there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, thank you.
Have a good one.